Welcome to another episode of the Drew Aversa Show. Today I have my guest, Frankie Yamsuan, also known as the Coconut Girl. Frankie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Drew.
Great to have you on here, Frankie. And you and I met at the Fancy Food Show a year or so ago, right before COVID. That was an incredible show. And you were out there with your coconut wagon and selling the best ice cream. So I just talk about you and your journey. And then also for the audience, you are a Shark Tank real deal contestant and a Mark Cuban company. So I think people are going to be really curious, how do you go from idea into being on the Shark Tank and actually being a successful entrepreneur? Because a lot of people get rejected on those shows, and you've done it, and you're living proof that an idea with the right strategy is possible.
But I was actually rejected once, Shark Tank, but it motivated me to, I don't know if you knew that, but
I did not.
I was rejected. I was like, oh my goodness. But I tried again. I mean, we can talk about this later, and I'm glad I did. I mean, it's all about being persistent, right? And that's what makes you a great business owner. How do you take rejection and just go for it again? But yes, thank you for having me. We met at the Fancy Food Show right before COVID. It was January of last year. Miss those days where you can just interact and meet with people.
And eat like the best food in the world from all over. I mean, that show is amazing, right? Not only do you have Coconut Girl there, you have like the best Parmesan cheese from Italy and all the Italians there. And then you have like the best Japanese soy sauce and then Vietnamese companies. Like you have everybody from everywhere around the world at that show.
It's great. You get to meet like-minded people. I mean, everyone loves food, right? I definitely miss that for sure. Now it's so awkward going to the grocery store. It's like in and out, and it's hard to just want to explore new products. I guess everything's on Instacart now. That's how you discover new products, right?
I don't know. You were talking about a virtual food show that you're going to now. So like Coconut Girl, though, first, your story before we get into the virtual food shows. Coconut Girl tastes awesome. For one, I had the product, so I can attest to your product is awesome. Let's talk about what Coconut Girl is, the brand, the story, and your time on the beach in Santa Monica to launching a product.
Yeah, so I've always been obsessed with health food, create healthy alternatives to everything. And when I came up with the idea, I just started getting into CrossFit and, the CrossFit cult, they love paleo. Everyone thought it was a fad diet at the time. What I loved about paleo was because at the time I had gained weight or just moving to LA, I gained weight and I was obsessed with like counting calories. And for someone like me, that just did not work. And so when I was introduced to paleo and CrossFit, the focus just shifted from, working out 2 hours a day, eating less calories to eating good nutrient dense food and is what worked because I have the opposite effect where if I'm having to count calories, then I go overboard and probably overeat. So my gym forced everybody and I signed, well, they didn't force me. I signed up to do the paleo challenge for 30 days. And so I did that. That's when my creative juices started flowing. I'm like, okay, well, how do I make this paleo, whether it's, cauliflower rice, spaghetti squash, as opposed to, your typical pasta, instead of using dairy. I became more obsessed with coconut, being Filipino, love coconut. And so, I was always obsessed with dates. And then one night I dreamt about this date shake recipe. I don't know why, but I woke up and I made it. And I was like, oh, this tastes really good. So I was obsessed with this date shake recipe. And I decided to just put it into my homemaker ice cream machine and it tasted amazing. And so gave it to coaches at the gym, started spreading, because mind you, a lot of people were doing the paleo diet for 30 days and no one's ever heard of paleo ice cream, but I was probably the first one to come out with that. And so the members of the gym, the coaches are like, Frankie, what is this ice cream that you're making? And they started just asking me if they could buy it. I'm like, what do you mean you want to buy it? So that was my first, I guess, official sale. Was one of the coaches wanted to buy it for her potluck and it just started spreading. I'm like, well, this is really weird. And at the time, I just dropped out of UCLA. I knew I always wanted to start my own business. I didn't know what it was. So that was kind of like the start of it. And I ended up going to culinary school. After culinary school, I had private clients. I just need to focus on one product. And I knew that everyone loved the ice cream. So I decided to put all of my effort into that and start branding it, create a name. Because I don't come from a sales and marketing background, I'm like, well, how do I become the brand? And so I thought of the name Coconut Girl. So I'm like, I'm going to be my brand. I'm going to be the Coconut Girl. And that's just kind of how it started, I guess, in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And then what products do you have? I mean, obviously you have the ice cream, but is it made out of date? Is the whole thing paleo? I mean, for people that don't know paleo diet of the food of, you talked about cauliflower. That just doesn't sound good for ice cream. What's in this ice cream?
Well, so with the paleo diet, it's just focusing on the non-processed ingredients. So dating back to the cavemen, I get it. Cavemen didn't eat ice cream, they didn't have ice cream makers, but the focus is just the natural foods, right? There's no dairy, no grains. So in the ice cream itself, so I have three flavors. I do ice cream sandwiches now. When I first started, they were all pints, but now I do ice cream sandwiches. So the ice cream itself is made with coconut milk as opposed to any dairy or soy. And then the cookies made with almond butter as opposed to flour. And I use honey, dates, and maple syrup to sweeten all of my products. So no refined sugars, there's no food colorings, there's no preservatives. It's just the pure ingredients. Like my coconut cream has no added ingredients, it's just pure coconut cream. So that's the focus of my product, and that's what makes it paleo.
I love it. And then how did you go, Frankie, from being coconut girl, selling these at the gym to now you're in Whole Foods, you're in numerous markets across the US. Congratulations on that. That's
Thank
awesome. I mean, just the journey of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, you dropped out of UCLA, you go to culinary school, you start cooking, you're in fitness, and you combine all this stuff, and then now you have this ice cream sandwich. How do you go from the idea into, you said you didn't have a sales marketing background, and then you start selling this stuff to Whole Foods.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like it kind of just happened to me. I didn't really have a plan. It was like, well, I'm not really sure, but let's see where this takes me. It's funny to say this. I was kind of like along for the ride. So, I started from the gym and then it started spreading to other gyms. And I'm like, well, how do I market this and be cute and be different? And so I went on Google, was just obsessing over icicle tricycles. So I found a company in Portland. They custom designed my icicle tricycle. So once I got that, I'm like, I'm gonna go because my whole world was CrossFit, and I knew there was always a CrossFit competition every weekend. So I would, message the organizer. I'm like, hey, can I come out and sell my ice cream, this and that? And so that's how I started. So it was kind of like a food truck concept, and I just grew it organically. And then when a grocery buyer was opening up a new location in downtown LA, saw my icicle tricycle. I don't even know if he even tried my product because he's like, hey, do you sell wholesale? I'm like, yes, I lied. If you watch my Shark Tank episode, I do kind of talk about how I lied about, having to figure it out on my own. But that's what led me into that new focus. I'm like, hey, I guess there's a demand here. A grocery store wants to carry my product. So I got my first account. And ever since that account, that's when I started focusing on the retailers and basically cold calling grocery stores, stopping by the local health food markets, telling them all about me, my products, and they loved it. And then Whole Foods actually discovered my products. And so that's how I got into Whole Foods. And then I started getting all these other natural food stores in LA finding me from this store and that store. So it just kind of happened.
So it's that first one of having a great product and then getting it into one place, and then kind of that snowball effect.
Exactly. And then, you're starting to get this validation like, hey, there is something to this. There's a business, there is a brand, there's a demand. Grocery buyers want this on their shelves. So then I just started hustling, doing the cold calls, emails, talking to the gatekeepers, just getting my product
Sales, yeah.
in hands.
So Frankie, on Shark Tank, they talk a lot about retail being one of the most challenging environments to get into to grow your sales. We're seeing direct to consumer brands now. Obviously, ice cream's challenging with shipping, and if one person wants like one ice cream, right? I mean, trying to ship that around is challenging. So with Shark Tank, what are they looking for? I mean, that you see different things, right? Direct to consumer brands, retail brands. How do you take yourself and position yourself to do well on Shark Tank as a retail brand, given the competition in that space and shelf space that's out there in stores?
One thing I realized about Shark Tank and what they're looking for is really your story and your hustle. And I think a lot of people can relate to my brand, and why I feel like I did really well on Shark Tank is because they could see my authenticity, what makes me different. I mean, there's so many ice cream on the shelves, right? But what makes me different? It's my story, my branding. And I feel like that is what is going to make you different and set you apart, because you're competing with a lot of people on the shelf space. Everything is shifted to now the branding, the entrepreneur, and that's what they want to see.
The actual storytelling piece and the hustle
Yes,
with
for
a great
Shark,
product.
With a great product, of course, and what makes you different, right? I mean, when I started Coconut Girl Paleo Ice Cream Sandwich, you couldn't find that in the grocery store. I think I have one competitor, but what truly makes you different? A lot of it has to do with the branding, obviously, right?
Well, and let's talk about that because when we talk about brand, when you went on Shark Tank, you had the brand present. I mean, you are a Coconut Girl. And then you see other people that go on Shark Tank and they're like, "Oh, I'm selling a widget today." Like, and you're just like, "Okay, there's no story, there's no energy, there's no passion, whatever." So how did you prepare for Shark Tank? What's the best way people can prepare? Because let's face it, not everybody's going to get on Shark Tank, but a lot of people may find an angel investor in their community. They may find somebody in their community. So how do you prepare for a pitch?
Knowing your business, and you should, but even your numbers, the operations. I think a lot of people come out there and they just assume entrepreneurs that want to go on the show, a lot of them are timid. They think because they don't have any sales that they can't get on the show, and it's very different. There's no one right answer. I know a lot of it has to do with knowing your business, knowing your numbers, having that energy and the confidence, and just being you. That to me is what's going to get you noticed on Shark Tank. You don't have to have sales, because I've seen some entrepreneurs that actually made a deal and they didn't necessarily have any like huge sales or any sales. They just had a prototype. So it's definitely your energy, your story, your branding, and you as the entrepreneur. Are you going to hustle, right? Because a lot of these sharks, they're constantly investing in so many companies. They don't want to be hands on with your business. They want to make sure that you know your business.
And then how do you choose, let's say you have five people making you an offer right then and there. How do you choose, what shark you want to work with? What are some things that should go into somebody's mind in that second in time? Because I mean, really, you might have 10 seconds to make a decision. You have incredible people right before you who are all highly qualified, very successful in their own right, different backgrounds. How do you make that decision? What goes through your mind as a person on Shark Tank in that situation?
Well, obviously, I watched a lot of Shark Tank before going on the show. And for some reason, I always knew I wanted Mark Cuban. I love his style, him as a leader, him being in sports as well, basketball. I grew up, I love basketball. And he invests a lot in companies like me, not necessarily ice cream, but, healthy alternative. So I knew I wanted Mark Cuban. I just think he's a great leader. Obviously, everyone has different opinions, and they said that, well, he bullied you into the deal. But I wanted Mark Cuban from the get go. So I was really surprised that I actually got him. I was really excited. I was like, wow, I made that happen. That's pretty cool. So, and obviously the deal, right? You have to know how low or whatever you're willing to, what your deals are that are coming at you. Obviously that has to matter though too. But knowing what I was willing to give up and who I wanted to work with, it worked out with Mark Cuban.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan of Cuban. I think his focus on health is definitely what we need for the future, and investing in brands like Coconut Girl is huge because, food is medicine, whether we, are at that point in society yet or not. It's definitely what we eat, I mean, at the cellular level, everything breaks down. So having healthy foods and brands like yours are great. That's awesome.
Not going away. And the better for you alternative, right? Same with my product, better for you ice cream alternative. But obviously do your research on all the sharks. I did my research, my background check, who would be a right fit. And Mark Cuban was just a right fit. And I don't regret it.
That's awesome. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs now that you've been on your journey?
Just staying persistent and learning how to take rejection, and it's all how you react and how you bounce back, right? Because I failed a lot in life, like till this day a lot of things aren't going right, but I'm still here, I'm still standing, and I'm a very self-aware person when it comes to myself and my business. Know what your weaknesses are and don't let that stop you. I mean, you could use your weakness to your advantage as long as you know what that is. And if you're not comfortable with a certain area of your business, whether it's finance, well, then go ask for help, outsource that. And that was my biggest struggle because, I mean, I'm still somewhat of a one woman show. There are a lot of things that I don't know, and I will just go outsource that, not necessarily hire them full time, but go reach out for help. And that was a biggest struggle because I'm used to just doing everything on my own. Not necessarily a pride thing, but it's more like I'm just a very hands on person. Not so much a perfectionist, but I'm just a hands on person. So learning to let go of certain things and stop worrying so much.
I love it. There's always that quote that says if you want to get higher up on the ladder, you have to let go of one hand in order to actually get to the next rung.
Yeah. And the one thing I keep having to remind myself, like this popped up somewhere, where stop feeding your worrier, instead feed your warrior. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Stop worrying so much.
I love that. And we will end it on that high note. Stop feeding the warrior, start feeding the warrior.
I have to remind myself this all the time. I mean, I'm just naturally a warrior. Warrior. So
That's awesome, Frankie. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today with everybody. And if people want to get Coconut Girl on their shelves or get it in general, where can they find Coconut Girl? How can they get in contact with you?
at coconutgirlbrands.com. We're very active on Instagram, so it's same coconutgirlbrands.com. We're in 14 states now, so if we're not in your store, you can go on our website, download this form, and you can take it to your local health food store and request our products. And it has helped because we get requests from buyers saying, "Hey, customers are in here asking for your product," so they listen.
Frankie Yamasuan, the Coconut Girl. Awesome having you on the show today. Thanks so much,
Thank you
Frankie.
so much.